I still remember the way they toasted over champagne while I stood there holding the one suitcase they allowed me to pack, like I was some stranger crashing their celebration instead of the daughter who had just lost her father. My sister laughed as she signed the final papers. My stepmother squeezed her hand proudly, and my uncle actually clapped like this was some kind of victory party. $40 million, my father's entire estate gone in a single afternoon, handed over like I had never mattered at all. And then, just to make sure the message was clear, they told me I had until sunset to leave the house I grew up in. No discussion, no sympathy, just cold smiles and a security guard waiting by the door. I didn't argue, I didn't cry, I just nodded, picked up my suitcase, and walked out while they celebrated behind me. But what none of them knew, what my sister definitely didn't know as she raised that glass to her new life, was that my father had made one final move before he died, and in less than 72 hours, the same bank they trusted with their millions would be the reason they came crawling back to me. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 28, married, and until a few weeks ago, I thought I understood exactly where I stood in my family. I wasn't the favorite. That was always my older sister, Rachel, but I never imagined I was the one they would erase completely the moment my dad was gone. Growing up, my dad used to tell me I was the only one who truly saw him, the only one who didn't care about money or appearances, and I believed that meant something. I believed that when the time came, he would make things fair. But the day his will was read, I realized just how wrong I was, or at least how wrong they wanted me to think I was. Sitting in that lawyer's office, watching Rachel smirk as she was handed everything, while I got nothing but a polite smile and a folder with personal items, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was something colder, sharper, because deep down, I knew my dad better than they ever did. And if there was one thing he hated, it was injustice. So either he had truly abandoned me, or he had set something in motion they were too greedy to see. The day of the will reading didn't feel real at first, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart from a distance, instead of sitting there in that cold, polished office with my hands clenched in my lap. Rachel showed up dressed in all black, but her heels were designer and her makeup was flawless, like she was attending a business meeting instead of mourning our father. My stepmother, Linda, barely even looked at me when I walked in, just gave me that tight, fake smile she'd perfected over the years, the same one she used every time she wanted to remind me I didn't quite belong. My husband squeezed my hand under the table, trying to ground me, but even he could feel the tension building in that room. Then the lawyer cleared his throat and started reading. At first, it was all formal language, donations, properties, investments, things that didn't mean much until the numbers started stacking up. And then came the moment that changed everything. The remainder of the estate, totaling approximately $40 million, will be transferred in full to Rachel Carter. I remember the exact second those words landed, because the room went completely silent, like even the air had stopped moving. I waited for my name to come next, for some explanation, some correction, but it never did. Instead, the lawyer glanced at me briefly before sliding a thin folder across the table. For you, Emily, your father left personal effects as outlined here. That was it. No apology, no clarification, just a quiet dismissal. Rachel didn't even try to hide her smile. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs slowly, savoring the moment like she just won something she believed she deserved. Linda reached over and took her hand, whispering something that made them both laugh softly. And that's when the humiliation really hit. Not just because I got nothing, but because they were enjoying it. I guess some people just don't earn their place, Rachel said casually, not even bothering to look at me. My chest tightened, but I refused to give her the reaction she wanted. I just nodded slowly, like I accepted it, even though every instinct in me was screaming that something wasn't right. Because my dad wasn't careless, and he definitely wasn't cruel. He wouldn't leave me with nothing, not like this, not without a reason. But before I could even process it, Linda spoke up, her voice suddenly firm. "We'll need you to move out of the house by tonight, Emily. It's legally Rachel's now." That was the moment it stopped being about money and started feeling like a complete erasure. My home, my memories, my place in that family, gone in a single sentence. My husband started to argue, but I squeezed his hand, stopping him. I wasn't going to beg them for anything, not in front of that smug look on Rachel's face. So I stood up, picked up the thin folder they'd given me, and walked out without saying a word, already knowing this wasn't the end of the story. The drive back felt surreal, like the world outside the window was moving normally while mine had completely stopped. My husband kept asking if I was okay, but I couldn't even answer because I didn't know what okay was supposed to feel like anymore. By the time we reached the house, the reality hit harder. There was already a black SUV parked outside and a man in a suit standing near the door like I was some kind of trespasser. Rachel didn't waste time. The second we walked in, she was already giving instructions, pointing at things like she'd owned them her whole life. "Don't touch anything that's not yours," she said sharply, watching me like I might steal from her. Linda stood beside her, arms crossed, completely silent but clearly approving every word. I went upstairs slowly, my chest tight as I looked around my room, the same room I grew up in, now feeling like it belonged to someone else. I packed quietly, folding clothes into my suitcase, trying not to let the memories get to me. Every corner of that room held something. Late-night talks with my dad, the way he used to knock before coming in, the small things that reminded me I mattered to him. And that's when something started to bother me even more. My dad had been very specific about everything in his life. He planned ahead, double-checked everything, and always told me, "Never trust what's obvious, look deeper." So why would he leave me with nothing but a vague folder? It didn't add up. When I finally opened it, sitting on the edge of my bed, I expected it to be meaningless, old photos, maybe a letter, but instead, I found something strange. Inside was a small envelope, sealed, with my name written in my dad's handwriting. My heart started pounding instantly. I hadn't noticed it earlier in the office, probably because of how quickly everything happened. For a second, I just stared at it, afraid to open it, like whatever was inside could either confirm my worst fear or completely change everything. Downstairs, I could hear Rachel laughing again, already celebrating like she'd won the lottery, and something about that sound pushed me. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and at first glance it didn't look like much, just a short message. But as I read it, my entire body went still. If you're reading this, it means they showed you exactly who they are. Good. Now listen carefully. My hands started shaking as I kept going, every word pulling me deeper into something I hadn't expected. This wasn't a goodbye letter. This was instructions, precise, deliberate instructions that mentioned a bank, a specific account, and a timeline. And the more I read, the more one thing became painfully clear. My father hadn't abandoned me at all. He had planned this, every single part of it. I folded the paper slowly, my mind racing, and for the first time since the will was read, I felt something different rising inside me. Not confusion, not grief, but control. I didn't tell my husband everything right away, not because I didn't trust him, but because I needed a moment to fully understand what my dad had set up before anyone else got involved. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope, keeping my expression neutral as I zipped up my suitcase and walked downstairs like nothing had changed. Rachel was in the living room, scrolling through her phone, probably already planning how to spend money that technically wasn't even secured yet, while Linda stood nearby giving orders to the staff, like she had officially crowned herself queen of the house. Neither of them even looked at me when I came down, which somehow made it easier. "I'm done," I said calmly, setting my suitcase by the door. Rachel glanced up briefly, her lips curling into a smirk. "Good, that makes this easier for everyone." I just nodded, not giving her anything, because for the first time, I wasn't the one at a disadvantage anymore. I just knew something they didn't. We left without another word, and the second we got into the car, my husband turned to me, his expression serious. "Emily, what's going on? You're too calm." I took a breath, then handed him the letter. He read it once, then again, slower the second time, his eyes widening slightly. "Your dad, he planned this?" I nodded. Every detail. The letter explained that the money Rachel had been given wasn't as simple as it looked. The accounts were real, the numbers were real, but they were also conditional. My dad had set up the structured release through the bank, one that required specific authorizations and verifications over a 72-hour period before full access could be granted. And the most important detail? The final authorization didn't belong to Rachel. It belonged to me. My dad knew exactly how they would react. He knew they would rush, celebrate, and expose their true intentions without thinking twice. And once they did, the control would shift completely. "So right now, they don't actually have the money?" my husband asked. "Not yet," I replied quietly, "and they won't, unless I give the final approval." For the first time since everything happened, I saw a different kind of expression on his face. Not worry, not anger, but something closer to disbelief mixed with respect. "Emily, this changes everything." I looked out the window, watching the house disappear behind us, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was stepping into something. Because in less than 3 days, the people who had just thrown me out like I was nothing were going to realize they had made a very expensive mistake, and there would be absolutely nothing they could do to fix it. The first call came less than 24 hours later, right on schedule. I was sitting in a quiet hotel room, the letter laid out in front of me like a blueprint, when my phone started ringing. Rachel. I stared at the screen for a second before answering, already knowing exactly why she was calling. "Emily," she said, her voice tight but trying to sound controlled. "There's been some kind of issue with the bank." I didn't respond right away, just let the silence stretch long enough to make her uncomfortable. "What kind of issue?" I asked calmly. There was a pause on the other end, then a sharp exhale. "They're saying there's a hold on the funds, something about additional authorization." I could practically hear the confusion turning into panic behind her words. "That's strange," I replied evenly, even though I already knew exactly what was happening. "Maybe you should ask them what they need." Another pause, longer this time. Then, quieter. "They said they need you." I almost smiled, but kept my voice steady. "Me?" "Yes," she snapped, losing patience. "Apparently, Dad listed you as some kind of final approver. I don't know what game this is, but you need to come down here and fix it." There it was. Not a request, not even an apology, just another demand, like I still owed her something. I leaned back in my chair, letting her sit in that silence again before I spoke. "That's funny," I said softly, "because yesterday I was told I didn't earn my place." She went quiet instantly. I could feel the shift on her end, the realization starting to hit her. "Emily, don't do this," she said, her tone changing fast, desperation creeping in. "We can figure this out. Just come to the bank." I glanced at the letter again, at the final line my dad had written. "Only help them if they prove they deserve it." And suddenly, everything felt very clear. "I'll think about it," I said, then hung up before she could say anything else. Over the next 2 days, the calls didn't stop. Rachel, Linda, even my uncle, they all tried, each one shifting their approach as the reality sank in. First came the demands, then the anger, then the excuses, and finally, the begging. By the third day, the bank had officially frozen the full release, and the pressure was on them, hard. That afternoon, I finally agreed to meet them. Not at the house, not on their terms, but at the bank. When I walked in, they were already there, sitting stiffly across from the same banker who now looked far less impressed by them. Rachel stood up the second she saw me, her expression a mix of forced relief and barely hidden panic. "Emily, thank God," she said quickly, stepping toward me. "We just need you to sign a few things and this will all be resolved." I didn't move. I just looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't see someone powerful. I saw someone cornered. Actually, I said calmly, there are a few things I need first. The room went completely silent because now the control wasn't just shifting, it was mine. I let the silence sit long enough for all of them to feel it, watching the confidence drain from Rachel's face as she realized this wasn't going to go the way she expected. Before I sign anything, I said calmly, I want a written agreement that I receive my full, equal share of the inheritance, along with a public acknowledgement that you forced me out and tried to cut me off completely. Linda's face went pale instantly, and my uncle shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but Rachel just stared at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. You can't be serious, she whispered. I tilted my head slightly. Oh, I am, because right now you don't have $40 million. You have nothing unless I say otherwise. The banker cleared his throat quietly, confirming it without saying a word. That's when the panic fully set in. Within minutes, the same people who had thrown me out without hesitation were agreeing to everything, every condition, every signature, every demand. And just like that, the power flips completely. I signed the final authorization, secured my rightful share, and walked out of that bank with my head high, not because I won money, but because I proved something far more valuable. Karma doesn't rush, but when it arrives, it hits exactly where it hurts. If you believe in stories where justice always finds its way back, make sure to subscribe, because this is just the beginning.